Hi everyone, this is Crystal, and today I have 2 pages to share with you, both of them in my Life Crafted album. This year I am using one of the Life Crafted albums to just document a few highlights from the year. These are photos that maybe I haven't done a full scrapbook layout for, that didn't fit into my Project Life spread. So these are stories that I felt deserved a little bit more attention, but maybe not enough to warrant a full 12 by 12 page. So I'm just using this album just kind of as a way to document those little stories throughout the year that just needed a little bit more space than my Project Life album allowed. So I'm using one of the brand new charcoal Life Crafted albums. It is absolutely gorgeous, and these are the first 2 spreads that I'm adding to my album. So for the first one, I'm using one of the cut files from February. It has these gorgeous flowers inside a heart. It actually had a sentiment in the center as well, but I have deleted that when I went to cut it because I knew I wanted to add a different title to my spread. So I'm just adding some liquid glue around the edges, and then I'm going to back it with vellum. So I'm just placing it down on a sheet of vellum from my stash, and I'm going to wipe off the excess glue because of course I always end up making a mess and getting way too much glue on my page. So I'm just going to wipe that off, and then I'm going to set this aside to dry for a minute before I trim it out. So while that dries, I can start working on my background. So I knew I wanted to use this gorgeous rainbow paper from Pink Fresh Studio that was in the February add-on kit, but I need to trim it down to fit inside the album. So I'm using a paper that was in my album. I like to keep just some blank white cardstock cut down to size in my album. That way I can use it as a template just like I did for this page. I can also use it to make sure that my holes are in the right place, and then I can also use it just to create some really simple pages very quickly without having to trim down any paper. So right now I'm just using it to make sure that everything is lined up, and I wanted to get it in just the right space, or in just the right place, so that I had the lighter colors and was able to trim off that darker blue and the darker orange. So now that I have those trimmed out, I can go ahead and trim away the excess vellum on my cut file. So I'm just trimming around the edge, just using a detail scissors. This isn't difficult at all. It's really easy just to trim around the edge once you have it glued down. I will go ahead and trim out the center of this cut file as well. But I do that off camera. I had to go find my cutting mat to use an X-Acto knife to trim out some of those pieces. So there you see it all trimmed out. To glue it down to the page, I'm going to actually glue the 2 sides of this spread together on the back just with a little washi tape before I add my cut file, just because I want to make sure that it's perfectly aligned. So I could have done this before I actually trimmed the pages down. I could have glued this down and then just trimmed the whole thing, but because the cut file is a little bit delicate, I decided to go ahead and just trim it with my scissors once it was glued down to the 2 pages, just following the line that's already there. So I added glue just to the outside edge of my cut file. At this point I'm thinking I want to tuck some things into those flowers, so I just wanted to add glue around the outside edge, and then because it was warping just a little bit because I had used liquid glue, I decided to set it aside to dry for a minute. I used the protective sheet from my cutting mat and a paper pad just to make sure that it was that would dry flat, and set it off to the side while I mat my photo. So I used the excess white cardstock from the cut file to add just a thin white border around my photo, and that cardstock was from this scrapbook add-on kit. And then I'm going to use this dark blue paper from Pink Fresh Studio to add a mat around my photo. Because I cut off that dark blue from the rainbow paper, I wanted to add in a little bit of that color to the page, so I decided to use it around my photo. And then I'm going to go through the ephemera pack that came in the kit. This is also from Pink Fresh Studio. And I'm just going to pull out things that I think might work. So this is the first time that I've used this kit for this layout, so I am not very familiar with what's in this packet. So I'm going to take some time and just go through the whole thing, and I'll pull out anything that I think might work for this spread. So I end up pulling out quite a bit. There are so many beautiful things in this pack. So many of them would have worked really well for this spread, so I had a really hard time narrowing it down and deciding which ones to use. But right now I'm just giving myself options, so I'm just kind of plunking down anything that I think might work into the pile up above, and then I'll end up putting the rest of the things away back into the package before I pull out my spread again and start actually getting things down on the page. So you can see I have that floral paper there on my desk. At first I was thinking that I would fussy cut some of those florals out and tuck them into the cut file that I have on my page and create some floral clusters. But I ended up finding some floral clusters in the die cut pack that worked instead. So I don't end up actually using that floral paper that I have on my desk, although that would also be a great way to add some florals to your pages, just by fussy cutting some of those florals. So there you can see I just peeled off the washi tape and trimmed down the center of my cut file so that I would have 2 pages again. There was one little piece that I had to just add a little bit of glue to stick it down to the left-hand side of the page because it wasn't attached to anything else. And before I do any embellishing, I'm going to make sure to get my holes punched onto my pages so that I don't run into any problems with having to punch through my photo or having to punch through an embellishment. So just going to use a heavy-duty hole punch, and again that template that I have in my album, just to get those holes all aligned, and then I don't have to worry about where they're going to go later on. Okay, so cleaning up my mess, and then I can start to add things onto my page. So you may have seen a minute ago I had tried to tuck my photo into the flowers. I really wanted to tuck it into those bottom flowers, but it was too big to do that. So I didn't plan this ahead. I just kind of was going on the fly, and it didn't actually work out the way I thought it would, but that's fine. I am actually going to tuck it into the top photos instead, so the top flowers instead. So the flowers are still going to overhang my photo, just not on the bottom. It'll be on the top, and it worked out just fine that way. I just added my title using the Pinkfresh Studio Puffy words that were in this kit. I just used part of the title that was on that page. I think it said Love You More, and I just decided to use Love You. This is a photo of me and my partner Jessie in Cancun. We recently took a trip to Cancun, and it was our very last day there, and we were trying to get a selfie because we hadn't taken a photo of the two of us the entire time we had been there, and realized that we really needed to do that. So we went out to the beach and we're trying to get a selfie, but we're both really terrible at it. So we ended up just laughing, and this is one of the outtakes of us laughing. I actually scrapbooked another photo of us, the one that did turn out in another spread, but this one I thought would be fun to add to this smaller album. So I'm adding a couple of those floral clusters I mentioned before from the die cut pack, kind of in a diagonal on my page. So I'm adding one to the top left side, and then I'll add the other to the bottom right corner of my photo. And that's going to be the 2 floral clusters that I add. And then the third set of embellishment is going to go up above my photo to the top where I have those other die cuts. So I'm adding a couple of these chipboard circles. I really love these chipboard circles. They're not super thick, so they definitely would work even in a pocket page, but because I'm working outside of the pocket, they definitely will have no trouble working on this page. I'm going to add 2 of those, one to that top cluster and then another to the bottom cluster once I get those florals in place. I added 2 of the die cuts to the top of my photo. One that said, "Stay close to those who make you feel like sunshine," and the other one says, "This makes me happy." I thought both of those were perfect for this spread. I was trying to add that little camera die cut to the bottom, but it just looked a little bit too busy next to the floral. It didn't stand out enough. It just blended into that floral piece. So I'm going to add one of these chipboard circles instead, and that one just says "Us." The one I added to the top left says "Happy," and then I added another little die cut circle that says "XO." And then I'm going to finish off the page with a few enamel dots. So these enamel dots are from that same Pinkfresh Studio collection. They match the colors perfectly. I'm just going to sprinkle a couple in each of the clusters that I have in groups of 3, which always just makes everything feel balanced to me. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is add my journaling. So I wasn't sure where the journaling was going to go on this page at first, and then I decided just to write it along the outside edge of the heart. So I'm going to start at the top floral cluster and just write all the way around the edge of the heart, and then I end up going up above my photo. I do have to move that blue enamel dot at the top so that I can continue writing up around the top edge of my photo. So you kind of have to turn the page to read the journaling, but that's fine. It seemed the least intrusive way to add the journaling, and it just kind of ends up looking like another outline around the heart. So I really actually like the way that it turns out. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is add a date stamp next to my photo above the floral cluster, and I'm just stamping the date of the photo, the date the photo was taken, not the date that I'm doing this page. And that's going to be it for this page. So in a second, I will move on to page number 2. So for my second page, I'm using another cut file from February. This one is of a heart with 2 little dog paw prints in it, and I thought it was adorable and perfect for documenting a photo of our dog, Abby. I'm backing it with this paper from Crate Paper. I had a really hard time cutting into it because I love that rainbow, but I thought it would be perfect to back this cut file with. So I went ahead and cut into it, and then I realized I wasn't paying attention and hadn't trimmed off the branding strip. So there is a piece of the branding strip at the bottom of my page, and I definitely don't like the way that looks. So I'm trying to figure out how to cover that up and how to fix my mistake without having to cut into that paper again and waste even more of it. So I decided just to use a strip of this floral paper, which is what I'm using for the opposite side of my page. I'm just going to cut a little strip long enough to, or wide enough to cover the branding strip. And then I'm going to add that to the bottom of my page, and it's just going to end up looking like a little embellishment at the bottom. So it was a mistake, but I think it actually works out just fine. And I actually kind of like adding a little bit of that floral to the right-hand side to make it match up with the left-hand side. So there you can see that's basically what the right-hand side is going to look like. I'm going to add a mat of that same kind of wood grain paper, the B side of the rainbow paper, behind my photo, just to tie that in to the other side of the page. And then I want to add another mat just because that floral paper is really busy and my photo is fairly busy, and I feel like I need something to kind of add some additional separation between the two. So I looked through the papers in the kit and I found this one from Pinkfresh Studio. It's just a light minty green, and that color does not appear in the paper that I'm using, but it coordinates. So it makes it stand off the page just enough. And then I'm gonna repeat that color on the right-hand side with that little die cut that I've just kind of slipped in beneath the paws. So that's gonna help tie that in, and then it helps my photo stand off of the page just enough. So now I'm playing with the die cuts. I'm still using the ones that I had pulled out for the last spread. I do end up adding a couple, I think, from the die cut pack, but I'm still working with the ones that I had originally pulled out. Also working with these chipboard pieces again. I really love these, so I'm going to use those to add some additional color to this page. But right now I'm just gluing down the cut file, and this time I'm just using some tape runner, which works really well for this one because it's not as delicate as that heart was. So because it has kind of thicker lines, I'm able to use tape runner without too much trouble. The one problem with using tape runner is that it sometimes gets around the edges And then I just go in with an eraser and just kind of remove some of that extra adhesive that's on the edges, just so that my page doesn't end up sticky in the album, and so that it doesn't stick to anything else. So that works pretty well. It depends on what tape runner you use. Some of them definitely don't have that problem. The one that I'm using is from scrapbook.com, which I really love, but it does tend to get a little sticky if you get any extra adhesive on there. So again, I'm going to make sure I get my holes in place before I do too much embellishing, just so that I don't have to move anything around and that I don't have to try to punch a hole through an embellishment. So I get those punched into the page, and then I can go ahead and get everything back on the page the way I had it. So my photo, like I said, is going to go on the left-hand side. I have a couple die cuts that I'm tucking in around it, and then I also have a couple die cuts on the right-hand side tucked into those paws. I did not glue those paws down, so those are just kind of floating there so that I can tuck things into them, which is something I really like to do when I'm using a cut file. I think it helps add some dimension and some movement to the page. So there you saw me go back into that die cut pack to see if there's anything else that I wanted to add. I did try this frame. I thought I could use it as a layer behind my photo, but it just didn't quite work. It was a little too small, and the color didn't quite work with the colors I had on the page. It was a much cooler tone of gray, and everything else that I have on the page is very warm toned. So I decided to not add that to the page, and to instead add another die cut that just has the days of the week on it, which I thought works for just about any page, but definitely worked for this one. So I want to add this little tag to the right hand side that says the perfect setting, and I decided to add a little bit of twine. So I was auditioning a couple different twines. I have that yellow die cut in the top of my photo that says favorite, so I thought about adding yellow twine to help tie that in, but the yellow twine I had was much brighter and didn't really work with the colors I had on the page, so I ended up using just some brown and white baker's twine, and that worked out just fine. I will end up tying in more yellow to make that die cut blend into the page a bit better just here in a minute by using a couple of the chipboard pieces. So I've added all the layers to my photo before I adhered my photo down, just because I want to see where I want to put my photo. So by adding the layers first, it helps me place my photo in the right spot, and it doesn't end up looking too heavy on the bottom or the top of my page. So I, of course, ran out of adhesive while filming. That seems to always be the case, so I just had to grab a new tape roller before I could adhere my photo down. And then I can do some of the final touches. So I added another little die cut to the top of my photo where there was some blank space. That one says there's so much to see, and the die cut below it says look and see, memories in the making. So I thought that worked really well together. And this is where I'm going to add some more of that yellow color. So I've added a chipboard circle to the right hand side that just has a floral on it, a white flower on it, and then I'm adding one to the bottom right of my photo as well that says remember this, and that is going to create my little triangle of yellow. And now I can finally add my title. So for my title, I'm going to use these puffy thickers. These are from the Heritage collection, I believe, from Maggie Holmes. The colors in these match this collection perfectly, this crepe paper collection. And I'm going to keep my title pretty simple. It's going to be Weekend Hike, and I'm just going to abbreviate weekend so that both of the words in my title are the same length. When I'm using tile alphas like this, I like to create just a grid with them, so it helped to make both of the words the same length. And then I could just add those to the bottom of that heart, and I overlap it a little so that there's not so much of a gap between the two words in my title. I had to check the date of my photo because I always look at it and then I always forget what the date was when it's time to actually add the date stamp. So I had to peel away my photo just to look at what date it was, and then I can stamp the date and add just a couple lines of journaling there below my title. And I'm just writing about how our dog is 14, going to be 15, and she still out hikes all of us. So that was really what this spread is about. And then that's it for this one. So I'm going to add it back to my album so you can see how both pages look in the album. And then there are a bunch of close-up photos of both of these pages coming up. So I hope that you have enjoyed watching the process for both of these pages. I hope that you were able to find some inspiration for using your kits and for using your Life Crafted albums. Of course, all of the products I've used will be linked down below, and be sure to check out the blog as well, where I'll go into more detail about both of these pages. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you back here soon.